There comes a moment in life when the roles you once played begin to feel strangely heavy. The expectations you inherited from family, culture, friends, and even your younger self no longer fit as comfortably as they once did. You may still be moving through the same routines, speaking the same words, living in the same environment, yet something inside you feels restless. A quiet voice begins to ask questions you can't easily silence. Is this truly who I am? Or is this who I learned to be? Friedrich Nietzsche believed that the greatest challenge of a human life is not survival, success, or approval. It is the courage to become who you truly are. Not the version shaped by the crowd, not the identity built to earn praise, but the deeper self that emerges only when you dare to question everything you've accepted without reflection. This process is not comfortable. It often begins with confusion, loneliness, and uncertainty. But for Nietzsche, these were not signs of failure. They were signs that real transformation had begun. Identity, he argued, is not something you discover fully formed. You are not born complete. Instead, you are a work in progress, a living project shaped by your choices, your struggles, and your willingness to confront yourself honestly. Many people spend their lives avoiding this confrontation, hiding behind routines and familiar beliefs because they fear what they might find beneath the surface. But growth begins the moment you stop running from your own questions. To become who you are requires radical honesty. It demands that you look directly at your strengths and your contradictions, your desires and your fears. Nietzsche often wrote about the importance of embracing inner chaos, not as something to eliminate, but as the raw material from which creativity and individuality emerge. The path toward authenticity is rarely clear. It requires stepping away from the comfort of the herd and learning to trust your own judgment, even when it leads you into unfamiliar territory. This journey can feel isolating at times. When you begin to think independently, you may notice that some relationships or certain expectations fall away. The desire for approval starts to lose its power, replaced by a deeper need for integrity. Nietzsche believed that the strongest individuals are not those who avoid solitude, but those who use it to refine their inner voice. In this video, we will explore 7 Nietzschean lessons designed to help you step into the process of becoming. These lessons are not about quick fixes or instant transformation. They are invitations to take responsibility for your own growth, to challenge inherited beliefs, and to shape a life that reflects your deepest values. Because in the end, becoming who you truly are is not a destination. It is a lifelong act of courage, creativity, and self-overcoming. There is a particular kind of loneliness that arrives not because you have failed socially, but because you have begun to change inwardly. Conversations that once energized you start to feel repetitive. Opinions you once accepted without question begin to sound hollow. You may find yourself stepping back from groups, habits, or environments that previously gave you a sense of belonging. At first, this distance can feel unsettling, even frightening. Yet in Nietzsche's philosophy, this stage is not a sign of loss. It is the birthplace of the free spirit. Nietzsche believed that society exerts a powerful pressure on individuals to conform. The tribe, as he described it, is not just a physical group, but a psychological force. The collective expectations that shape how people think, behave, and define success. From a young age, most people absorb values unconsciously. They learn what is acceptable, what is admired, and what must be hidden to maintain approval. While these norms create stability, they can also suppress individuality. The moment you begin to question them, you step outside the safety of the collective and into solitude. Isolation, in this sense, is not simply being alone in a room. It is the experience of seeing the world differently from those around you. You may still be surrounded by people, yet feel internally separate because your values are evolving. Nietzsche saw this as a necessary stage in personal development. The free spirit, the person capable of independent thought, cannot emerge without first separating from inherited beliefs. This separation often feels like a loss of belonging, but it can also be understood as an evolution of consciousness. Many individuals interpret loneliness as a failure of connection. They rush to fill the silence with distractions, new relationships, or constant noise, because the absence of external validation feels unbearable. Nietzsche warned that this urge to return to the herd can prevent genuine growth. Silence is uncomfortable because it removes the mirrors that once reflected your identity back to you. Without those reflections, you are left with a more difficult task, defining yourself from within. Independent thought requires periods of quiet. In silence, you begin to notice the difference between your authentic voice and the echoes of collective opinion. You hear your doubts more clearly. You confront your contradictions. You discover which beliefs feel genuinely yours and which ones you adopted merely to belong. This process can be disorienting, like walking through fog on a mountain path. There are no clear markers, no applause, and often no immediate sense of progress. Yet with each step, you develop an inner compass. Nietzsche did not romanticize loneliness as an easy or purely noble state. He understood that separation from the crowd can bring uncertainty and vulnerability. When you step away from familiar roles, you may face misunderstanding or even criticism. Others may interpret your independence as rejection. But for Nietzsche, the discomfort of standing alone is the price of authenticity. The free spirit must be willing to endure periods of isolation in order to think and create without constraint. There is also a deeper transformation that occurs during these solitary phases. Without constant social reinforcement, you begin to rely less on external approval. You learn to observe your own thoughts without immediately seeking confirmation. Decisions become less about fitting expectations and more about aligning with personal values. Gradually, solitude shifts from being an enemy to becoming a teacher. It reveals your strengths and exposes your fears. It shows you how much of your identity was built for acceptance rather than truth. Consider the image of a solitary walk through the mountains. At the base, paths are crowded and well marked. As you climb higher, the trails narrow and the number of travelers decreases. The air becomes thinner, the environment quieter. At first, this height can feel isolating, even dangerous, but it also offers a wider perspective. You begin to see landscapes that were invisible from below. Similarly, the journey toward individuality often leads you into less populated territory, not because you are abandoning humanity, but because you are exploring dimensions of yourself that few people choose to examine. The loss of belonging that accompanies this stage is not necessarily permanent. Rather, it is a transitional space where you shed identities that no longer fit. Over time, you may discover new forms of connection based on authenticity rather than conformity. Relationships become more honest because they are built on shared depth rather than mutual performance. But these connections emerge only after you have learned to stand independently. Nietzsche's vision of the free spirit was not someone who rejects all society or isolates themselves permanently. Instead, it was an individual capable of engaging with the world without being controlled by it. Solitude, in this sense, is a training ground. It teaches you how to listen to your inner voice before responding to external pressure. It strengthens your capacity to hold unconventional ideas without immediately abandoning them for approval. If you are currently experiencing a sense of distance from the crowd, it may be helpful to see it not as a void, but as an opening. This phase invites reflection, creativity, and the development of an inner foundation that cannot be shaken by trends or opinions. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel separate?" you might ask, "What is this solitude allowing me to discover about myself?" In the quiet moments when you walk alone, whether literally on a mountain path or metaphorically through a period of personal change, you begin to cultivate the qualities Nietzsche admired most: independence, courage, and authenticity. Loneliness becomes less a sign of absence and more a space of possibility. It is here, away from the noise of the tribe, that the free spirit learns to speak in its own voice and take its first confident steps toward becoming who it truly is. From the moment you are born, you begin absorbing an invisible framework that tells you what is right, what is wrong, what is admirable, and what is shameful. These rules rarely arrive as formal lessons. Instead, they appear through everyday experiences: praise when you behave a certain way, criticism when you step outside expectations, and subtle signals about who you are supposed to become. Over time, these messages form what feels like your personal moral compass. But Nietzsche challenged a deeply unsettling idea. Much of what we call our values may not actually be ours at all. According to Nietzsche, morality is often shaped by collective agreement rather than individual reflection. Societies develop rules that help maintain order and stability, and individuals internalize those rules to belong. This process is natural. Humans are social beings who seek acceptance and connection. Yet the danger arises when inherited norms become invisible truths rather than conscious choices. When you follow a value simply because it has always been there, you may be living according to a script written long before you had the chance to question it. Social expectations shape identity in powerful ways. Consider how many people choose careers, relationships, or lifestyles based less on genuine desire and more on what is considered respectable or safe. Cultural narratives about success, stable jobs, predictable milestones, approved ways of living can quietly dictate life decisions. Even personal traits, such as being agreeable or self-sacrificing, may be reinforced so strongly that they feel like inherent personality features rather than learned behaviors. Nietzsche argued that this kind of unconscious conformity can lead to a life that feels strangely empty because it is guided by external approval rather than internal conviction. To become who you truly are, you must begin questioning the assumptions you inherited. This does not mean rejecting every social norm or becoming rebellious for its own sake. Instead, it requires curiosity and courage. You might start by asking simple but profound questions. Why do I believe this is good? Whose voice do I hear when I judge myself? Do my actions come from genuine values or from fear of disapproval? These questions can feel uncomfortable because they challenge familiar foundations, but discomfort is often the first sign that you are thinking independently. Nietzsche described the herd instinct as the tendency to adopt shared moral beliefs without examining their origin. When you rely solely on herd morality, your sense of right and wrong is based on collective comfort rather than personal understanding. You may avoid certain desires or ideas not because they are harmful, but because they conflict with social expectations. Over time, this can lead to inner tension, a feeling that you are performing goodness rather than living authentically.
Rethinking what good means requires stepping outside automatic judgments. For example, traits traditionally praised by society, obedience, modesty, self-denial, may be valuable in some contexts, but limiting in others. Nietzsche encouraged individuals to look beyond inherited labels and ask whether certain values truly support growth and vitality. A behavior considered selfish by the crowd might actually be an act of self-respect. Conversely, actions praised as virtuous might be motivated by fear rather than genuine compassion. The goal is not to discard morality altogether, but to rebuild it consciously. This process can feel risky because questioning norms may lead to misunderstanding. When you begin to define your own values, you may notice that some people react with discomfort or resistance. Shared beliefs create a sense of unity, and those who challenge them can appear threatening. Nietzsche acknowledged that independent thinkers often face criticism because they reveal possibilities beyond the familiar. The courage to rethink morality, therefore, includes the willingness to stand by your reflections, even when they are unpopular. However, questioning inherited values does not mean abandoning empathy or responsibility. Nietzsche's philosophy is often misunderstood as promoting pure individualism without regard for others. In reality, he emphasized the importance of creating values that enhance life, values that reflect strength, creativity, and honesty. When you consciously shape your moral framework, your actions become more intentional. You are no longer following rules out of fear, but acting in alignment with deeply considered principles. One way to begin this process is through careful self-observation. Notice the moments when you feel guilt or pride, and ask what standard you are measuring yourself against. Are those standards truly yours, or do they belong to a culture, a family system, or a group you once depended on for acceptance? Over time, you may find that certain beliefs no longer resonate. Releasing them can feel disorienting, like stepping into unfamiliar territory, but it also creates space for new, more authentic values to emerge. Imagine morality as a set of inherited tools. Some may be incredibly useful, promoting kindness, cooperation, and respect. Others may be outdated, limiting your ability to grow or express your individuality. Nietzsche encouraged individuals to examine these tools carefully, keeping what serves life and reshaping what does not. This approach transforms morality from a rigid structure into a living, evolving system. Ultimately, questioning the morality you inherited is an act of self-respect. It acknowledges that you are capable of thinking deeply about your beliefs rather than accepting them passively. It allows you to move from unconscious conformity toward conscious choice, and in doing so, you begin to step out of the herd instinct and into a more authentic existence, one where your actions reflect not only social expectations, but also the unique values you have chosen to create and live by.
Few ideas capture Nietzsche's philosophy more vividly than the assertion that suffering is not merely a misfortune to endure, but a force capable of forging strength. Life, he believed, is not meant to be sanitized or shielded from difficulty. To avoid pain, to seek comfort at all costs, is to risk stagnation. The very challenges we resist, the struggles we dread, are the crucibles in which character and vitality are created. Suffering is not arbitrary in Nietzsche's view. It is an inevitable component of existence. Each human life is intertwined with setbacks, losses, failures, and disappointments. For some, these experiences are cataclysmic: the death of a loved one, a betrayal, the collapse of dreams painstakingly nurtured. The initial response to such events is often despair, anger, or confusion. But Nietzsche encourages a radical reinterpretation. He urges us to see suffering not as a threat to our existence, but as a stimulus for growth, a test that exposes our limits and pushes us to surpass them. At the core of this lesson is the idea that pain catalyzes transformation. When we are comfortable, when life flows predictably and easily, the psyche and the spirit have little incentive to expand. Challenges disrupt complacency. They demand that we confront ourselves, examine our weaknesses, and reconsider our priorities. In facing adversity, we are forced into introspection. We ask, who am I in this moment? What resources do I have that I have not yet recognized? How can I respond rather than retreat? The answers to these questions are rarely obvious at first, but the act of engagement, of turning towards suffering rather than away from it, begins a process of inner strengthening.
Consider, for example, the pain of failure. On the surface, failure feels like a definitive endpoint, proof that effort was wasted or that the self is inadequate. Yet Nietzsche saw failure differently. Failure exposes illusions and pretenses, both internal and external. It reveals areas where growth is needed, where values may have been superficial, where priorities may have been misaligned. When we interpret failure consciously, rather than succumbing to self-pity, it becomes a teacher. Each setback, each disappointment, contains within it the raw material for refinement, clarity, and resilience. In this way, suffering can function as a mirror. It reflects not only what has gone wrong, but also what potential has yet to be realized. Avoiding struggle, on the other hand, prevents development. Modern culture often encourages comfort, safety, and the avoidance of pain at almost any cost. Yet Nietzsche would argue that this is an impoverished way to live. A life sheltered from difficulty risks remaining superficial, never encountering the depths of thought, creativity, or moral courage that adversity compels. Struggle forces decision, responsibility, and initiative. It demands that the individual assert their will rather than passively accept circumstance. Without friction, there is no sharpening. Without resistance, there is no growth. Resilience, therefore, is not simply endurance, it is the conscious interpretation of suffering. Nietzsche differentiates between passive suffering, experiencing hardship as victimhood, and active suffering, engaging with it deliberately to cultivate strength. The former leads to bitterness, stagnation, and a sense of powerlessness. The latter transforms hardship into a tool of self-overcoming. A person who suffers actively recognizes that pain is neither punishment nor accident, but an opportunity to refine character. Each challenge faced with awareness becomes a brick in the foundation of the self. Each trial, an invitation to become more whole, more autonomous, and more capable of creating meaning.
Nietzsche's perspective also reframes the role of fear. Many avoid suffering not only because it is unpleasant, but because it threatens the ego. The ego desires security, predictability, and approval. Suffering challenges all three. Confronting pain forces us to encounter aspects of ourselves that are fragile, vulnerable, or untested. Yet it is precisely this confrontation that enables growth. By embracing suffering as a catalyst rather than an enemy, the ego is tempered, the self is strengthened, and the capacity for authentic action expands.
The transformation of suffering into strength also requires a level of mental and emotional discipline. Nietzsche emphasizes that interpretation matters. Two people can experience the same hardship, yet one emerges empowered while the other succumbs to despair. The difference lies in how the individual frames the experience. Active reflection, journaling, philosophical inquiry, or even artistic expression can convert raw pain into insight. Each act of engagement allows suffering to be understood, integrated, and transmuted into personal power. Historical and contemporary examples abound. Many of the world's most influential thinkers, artists, and leaders faced profound adversity. Nietzsche himself endured illness, isolation, and social estrangement, yet he used these hardships to deepen his philosophy and sharpen his understanding of the human condition. His suffering was not wasted. It became fuel for insight. Similarly, consider a musician who loses their hearing, a writer whose work is rejected repeatedly, or an entrepreneur who faces repeated failure. Those who reinterpret struggle as opportunity often emerge with greater clarity, creativity, and resilience than those who live lives insulated from difficulty. Ultimately, this Nietzschean lesson teaches that strength is never conferred externally. It is forged internally. Life's hardships are unavoidable, yet our response determines whether they crush us or elevate us. Suffering becomes a ladder, each rung requiring courage, reflection, and will. Each challenge met consciously transforms not only circumstances, but the individual's capacity to act, endure, and create meaning. To live fully, according to Nietzsche, is to embrace this cycle of struggle and transformation. Pain is not a detour from life, but an essential route toward it. Each difficulty carries the seed of self-overcoming, each moment of suffering an opportunity to become stronger. By refusing to evade hardship, confronting it with awareness, and interpreting it as a catalyst, we convert what might have destroyed us into the source of enduring power. In this way, Nietzsche's maxim, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," is not merely a motivational slogan. It is a profound psychological and existential principle. Suffering is the raw material from which the self is sculpted, the forge in which resilience, wisdom, and authenticity are tempered. Those who learn this lesson understand that the challenges of life are not obstacles to happiness. They are the path to becoming the person they were always capable of being. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. To live fully, to become who you truly are, requires a willingness to look inward with unflinching clarity. Nietzsche believed that self-knowledge is not a gentle, comforting process. It is often uncomfortable, disorienting, and even painful. Yet it is precisely this discomfort that serves as the catalyst for transformation. Radical self-honesty is the practice of confronting your inner contradictions, acknowledging your shadow aspects, and embracing the chaos within, for it is from this tension that creativity and authenticity emerge. Most people avoid the difficult truths about themselves. They hide behind social masks, habitual patterns, or comforting illusions that make life predictable. We tell ourselves stories. I am kind, I am strong, I am in control. And in many ways, these narratives are useful. They help us navigate society and protect fragile egos. Yet Nietzsche warns that clinging to comforting illusions limits growth. The persona, the image we present to the world, can become a cage. To step beyond it requires honesty, seeing both the light and the shadow, the noble impulses and the fears, the strengths and the contradictions. Radical self-honesty begins with acknowledging contradictions within yourself. Every human carries multiple, often conflicting desires and impulses.
You may value freedom, yet cling to security. You may seek love, yet fear vulnerability. You may strive for excellence, yet procrastinate in comfort. These contradictions are not flaws to suppress, but signals to examine. Nietzsche describes this inner chaos as necessary. It is the friction of opposites that fuels growth. When you face your contradictions, instead of denying them, you open a space for self-awareness, choice, and integration. Accepting your shadow is a central part of this process. The shadow represents the parts of yourself that you have disowned: envy, aggression, selfishness, doubt, and fear. Most people repress these aspects because they are socially unacceptable or uncomfortable to confront. But Nietzsche recognized that denying the shadow diminishes the whole self. It is only by acknowledging your darker impulses and understanding their origin that you can channel them constructively. For instance, anger might be redirected into assertive action, envy into motivation, and fear into caution that protects rather than paralyzes. Self-honesty requires courage, the willingness to observe your shadow without judgment and to integrate it consciously into your life. Creativity, Nietzsche argued, is born from this inner tension, the friction between conflicting aspects of the self. Chaos and order, light and shadow, generates energy. That energy can be expressed in art, philosophy, work, or personal transformation. Consider the metaphor of the dancing star. A star does not emerge from calm, uniform matter. It is born from turbulence, pressure, and fusion. Likewise, your greatest insights, creations, and personal breakthroughs often arise from confronting uncomfortable truths rather than avoiding them. The moments of inner conflict, when your ego resists but your self refuses to lie, are the moments where something entirely new can emerge. Practicing radical self-honesty also requires discipline and reflection. Daily habits of introspection, journaling, meditation, or contemplation can help illuminate hidden truths. Ask yourself questions such as, why did I react this way? Which motives am I unwilling to admit? What do I fear acknowledging about myself? These questions may uncover patterns you have ignored or traits you have disowned. They may also reveal your authentic desires beneath layers of societal expectation. Over time, consistent self-inquiry sharpens perception, clarifies values, and strengthens integrity. An important aspect of this practice is the willingness to accept discomfort without avoidance. Radical honesty often triggers resistance, guilt, shame, anxiety, or self-criticism. Nietzsche acknowledges that growth requires confronting these emotions directly. Avoidance may feel easier, but it reinforces superficiality and dependence on external validation. By facing discomfort head-on, you strengthen your capacity for resilience and self-mastery. Over time, you cultivate the ability to sit with uncertainty, complexity, and even contradictions without fleeing or fabricating comforting narratives. Radical self-honesty is not an exercise in self-flagellation. It is not about identifying faults to punish yourself. Instead, it is a path toward clarity, freedom, and creativity. The purpose is to recognize all aspects of your being, to accept them, and to make deliberate choices in alignment with your deepest values. Nietzsche believed that only by embracing your internal chaos can you generate the energy required to live authentically and create meaning beyond external prescriptions. Consider the example of an artist confronting failure and self-doubt. Initially, these feelings may feel paralyzing, prompting withdrawal or avoidance. Yet by honestly acknowledging the fear, the envy of peers, or the desire for approval, the artist transforms these emotions into fuel for experimentation and bold creation. Without honesty, the same feelings would remain unprocessed, festering in the unconscious, subtly shaping choices and limiting potential. With honesty, they become stepping stones toward a more genuine expression of self. In daily life, radical self-honesty manifests as decisions made with conscious awareness rather than automatic patterns. It may involve admitting mistakes, taking responsibility for failures, or acknowledging uncomfortable truths about relationships, work, or personal habits. Each act of honesty strengthens the alignment between thought, emotion, and action. Over time, living in alignment with your inner truth cultivates integrity, resilience, and authenticity, qualities Nietzsche regarded as essential to self-overcoming. Finally, radical self-honesty prepares you for the next stages of Nietzschean growth, embracing your will to power and shaping your life creatively. When you know yourself fully, light and shadow, contradictions and potentials, you are empowered to make deliberate choices. You no longer react solely to circumstance or social expectation. You act from awareness, creating a life that reflects your unique combination of chaos and insight. This is the essence of becoming who you truly are, a self that is conscious, integrated, and capable of generating its own meaning and vitality.
He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Twilight of the Idols. To Nietzsche, self-overcoming is not a single act of transformation, but a permanent orientation toward life. It is the discipline of repeatedly surpassing who you were yesterday. The danger is never failure, it is stagnation. The moment you believe you have fully arrived is the moment growth begins to slow. Life moves, circumstances change, and so must you. Growth does not happen in one dramatic breakthrough. It unfolds in layers. Each challenge you overcome reveals a new limitation. Each insight exposes a deeper question. The person you were 5 years ago could not handle the responsibilities you carry today, and the person you are today is only a stage in development. Continuous growth requires humility. You must be willing to admit that your current mindset, habits, and abilities are not final. There is always another level of discipline to cultivate, another fear to confront, another skill to sharpen. Self-overcoming means deliberately placing yourself in situations that stretch you, rather than settling into comfort. Comfort preserves who you are. Challenge transforms who you are. When you adopt this mindset, obstacles stop feeling like interruptions and start becoming training grounds. Every difficulty becomes an invitation to evolve. Nietzsche rejects the idea of a fixed, permanent self. Identity is not a solid statue, carved once and for all. It is a process in motion. You are not something you discover fully formed. You are something you continuously shape. This means your past does not imprison you. Old labels, shy, anxious, undisciplined, incapable, are descriptions of former stages, not eternal truths. When you act differently, you become different. Identity follows behavior. Self-overcoming requires shedding outdated versions of yourself. The beliefs that once protected you may later restrict you. The ambitions that once motivated you may eventually feel too small. Growth demands release. Just as a snake must shed its skin to survive, you must shed former identities to expand. This can feel destabilizing because it removes certainty, but it also grants freedom. If identity is dynamic, then transformation is always possible. Continuous growth is demanding. It requires effort, discomfort, and resilience. Without a clear reason, a why, the strain can feel meaningless. This is why Nietzsche emphasizes purpose. A strong why gives suffering direction. It transforms hardship from random pain into meaningful effort. When you know what you are striving toward, mastery, independence, creative expression, integrity, you can tolerate the how, long hours, rejection, setbacks, doubt. Purpose does not eliminate difficulty, it justifies it. Without purpose, struggle feels pointless. With purpose, struggle becomes investment. Your why does not need to impress anyone else. It only needs to be strong enough to anchor you when motivation fades. Because motivation is temporary, discipline lasts longer, but purpose sustains both. Self-overcoming, then, is the ongoing act of aligning growth with purpose. It is the refusal to settle into outdated identities. It is the decision to confront difficulty not as punishment, but as preparation. You are not meant to remain who you were. You are meant to surpass yourself again and again, as long as you live. No price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. The gay science. For Nietzsche, meaning is not something you stumble upon while waiting for clarity. It is not hidden in the universe, waiting to be revealed to the patient or the lucky. Meaning is constructed.
It is shaped through decision, commitment, and action. If you live passively, waiting for purpose to announce itself, you remain dependent on circumstance. But when you act deliberately, you begin to build meaning from the inside out. To create meaning, you must first accept responsibility for your direction. This is the turning point. As long as you blame your dissatisfaction on other people, society, bad luck, or your past, you surrender authorship. Responsibility does not mean you caused every hardship. It means you accept that the future is shaped by your choices now. Owning your life direction requires difficult honesty. Are you choosing your path or defaulting into it here? Are your goals truly yours or inherited from expectations? When you take responsibility, you stop drifting. You decide what matters, what is worth sacrifice, and what kind of person you intend to become. That decision alone begins generating meaning. Responsibility is heavy, but it is empowering. It transforms life from something that happens to you into something you shape. Conformity is easy. It offers approval and reduces conflict, but it also dilutes individuality. When you measure your life purely by external standards, status, comparison, validation, you may achieve success without feeling fulfilled. Why? Because you did not create the standard, you adopted it. Nietzsche calls for creation instead. Creation means consciously choosing your values rather than inheriting them blindly. It means asking, what do I respect? What kind of strength do I admire? What kind of life feels worthy of effort? Creation is not rebellion for its own sake. It is intentional alignment. You may share many values with your culture, but the difference is that you have examined and chosen them. That act of choosing transforms borrowed beliefs into owned convictions, and ownership is the foundation of meaning.
Many people believe they must first find themselves before acting. Nietzsche reverses this idea. You discover who you are by what you repeatedly do. Action clarifies identity. If you act courageously, you become more courageous. If you practice discipline, you become disciplined. If you speak honestly, you become honest. Identity solidifies through behavior. Thinking alone does not create meaning. Doing does. Each action is a declaration of what you value. Over time, these declarations accumulate into character. This is why waiting for certainty often leads nowhere. Meaning grows through engagement. Even imperfect action moves you forward. Even failed attempts refine direction. Inaction, on the other hand, preserves confusion. To own yourself, as Nietzsche suggests, is to live deliberately. It may cost comfort, it may cost approval, but the reward is profound. A life that feels internally coherent because it is shaped by chosen values and reinforced by consistent action. Meaning is not found, it is built, one decision at a time.
My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati. Friedrich Nietzsche, ex homo. One of Nietzsche's deepest and most demanding ideas was amor fati, love your fate. Not tolerate it, not endure it, not make peace with it reluctantly. Love it. And not just the parts that flatter your ego, the promotions, the recognition, the victories that confirm your sense of worth. Amor fati extends further. It includes the awkward failures, the humiliations, the betrayals, the wrong turns, the seasons of confusion, even the moments you still struggle to speak about. Most people divide their lives into two categories, what they accept and what they resent. They cling to successes as proof of identity and quietly resist their mistakes as stains on it. But Nietzsche challenges this fragmentation. To reject your past is to reject the process that shaped you. Every wound, every misstep, every painful ending contributed to your current depth, awareness, and strength. The idea behind amor fati is not that suffering is pleasant. It is that suffering is formative. Think about the mistakes you regret most. At the time, they may have felt like proof of inadequacy. Yet those experiences likely forced reflection. They exposed blind spots. They strengthened boundaries. They clarified values. Without them, You might still be naive in areas where you are now wiser. The very experiences you wish had not happened may have carved the resilience you rely on today. When you embrace your entire story, something profound shifts. You stop replaying alternate timelines in your mind. You stop asking, what if I had chosen differently? You stop imagining a cleaner, smoother version of your life. Instead, you begin to see your path as necessary. This does not mean believing that everything was fair. It means recognizing that everything was usable. Every event became raw material, and through your interpretation and response, that material shaped you.
To love your fate is to say, nothing in my life was wasted. It means you would not delete your failures because they taught you discernment. You would not erase heartbreak because it deepened your emotional range. You would not remove struggle because it forged strength that comfort never could. When you reach this point, regret loses its grip. You no longer wish to be someone else with a different history. You stop envying lives that appear simpler or more fortunate. You realize that your exact sequence of events, with all its chaos and contradiction, produced your unique perspective, and that perspective is irreplaceable. Amor fati also transforms how you face the future. If you truly trust that even hardship becomes part of your growth, fear weakens. You become bolder. You take risks more willingly because you understand that even failure will serve you. Nothing can truly derail you if everything becomes material for becoming. When you stop wishing for another life, you begin fully inhabiting your own. You are no longer divided against your past. You are no longer negotiating with reality. You are aligned with it. This alignment brings a quiet strength, a steadiness, a sense that whatever has happened and whatever will happen belongs to you, not as a burden, but as your fate, and you choose it.
Nietzsche's idea of self-overcoming is often misunderstood. It is not about defeating rivals, proving superiority, or accumulating status. It is about surpassing the version of yourself that existed yesterday. The real contest is internal. When Nietzsche speaks of overcoming, he is pointing directly at your habits, your fears, and your limitations, especially the subtle ones you justify or ignore. Yesterday's fears might still whisper today: the fear of speaking honestly, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure. Self-overcoming begins the moment you act despite them, not recklessly, but deliberately. When you speak up, even though your voice shakes, you have surpassed yesterday's hesitation. When you attempt something difficult, rather than postponing it again, you have expanded your threshold. Courage does not need to be dramatic to be transformative. Often, it is quiet and invisible. Yesterday's habits are even more powerful than fears. Habits create identity through repetition. If yesterday you chose distraction over discipline, avoidance over confrontation, comfort over growth, today offers another chance. Self-overcoming may look small from the outside, waking up when you said you would, finishing what you started, resisting the impulse to react emotionally. But these small victories accumulate. They reshape character. Yesterday's limitations are frequently self-imposed. You may have told yourself, "I'm just not confident, I'm not creative, I'm not disciplined." Nietzsche would challenge this fixed thinking. Limitations are often rehearsed identities. When you behave differently, even slightly, you weaken their authority. Each act that contradicts your old narrative loosens its grip. This is why daily practice matters. Self-overcoming is not a grand event. It is a discipline. It happens in ordinary moments, choosing patience instead of anger, focus instead of distraction, effort instead of excuses. Over time, these micro-decisions compound into transformation, and this leads to Nietzsche's deeper point. Real strength is not domination over others. It is mastery over your own impulses. Anyone can react. Few can restrain themselves. Anyone can boast. Few can endure silently. Anyone can blame. Few can take responsibility. Mastery over impulses means pausing before anger controls you. It means directing ambition without being consumed by comparison. It means channeling desire productively rather than destructively. This is not suppression, it is integration. Your impulses are not enemies, but they must be governed. When you practice daily self-overcoming, you become less reactive and more deliberate. You stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your own potential. Growth becomes internal rather than competitive. In the end, self-overcoming is a quiet revolution. It is the consistent choice to be slightly braver, slightly more disciplined, slightly more honest than you were before. And over months and years, those slight differences create a radically different person. Not someone who conquered the world, but someone who mastered themselves.
The snake which cannot shed its skin has to die.
Thus spoke Zarathustra. Nietzsche's metaphor is clear. Survival depends on change. Just as a snake must shed its old skin to continue living, you must release outdated identities, beliefs, and roles to continue growing. What once protected you can eventually confine you. Becoming yourself requires the courage to evolve beyond who you used to be. This process is rarely comfortable. Loneliness may arise when you outgrow environments or relationships that once defined you. Struggle is inevitable when you challenge inherited values or confront your own limitations. Uncertainty appears when you step away from familiar paths and begin shaping your own direction. Yet these experiences are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are signs that growth is happening. Identity is not discovered fully formed. It is forged through conscious choice. Each decision either reinforces an old pattern or creates space for transformation. Each act of honesty, courage, and responsibility strengthens your authorship over your life. You are not fixed. You are becoming. The path of becoming demands release, resilience, and deliberate action, but it also offers something profound: authenticity. When you accept change as necessary, struggle as formative, and choice as creative power, you step into ownership of your existence. You are not here to fit into a finished mold. You are here to shape your own form, again and again.